Hello and welcome to Redeemer's Practical Prayer Course. This is session 5, the penultimate session, so we're nearly there. If you're just jumping in here, don't do that. It won't really make as much sense. It won't be as helpful. Go to redeemermcr.com/prayer. You'll find all these sessions as well as other resources like sermons, discussion guide, apps, resources, things like that. So go ahead to redeemermcr.com/prayer and you can get it all there for free. Right, today we're talking about tools for prayer. So we talked about our posture towards coming to God. We talked about planning for prayer. We've talked about what is it like? What are the words that we actually say to God? Like, how do we even begin? We talked about listening to God, what that means, and how we can get into trouble if we lean on one side or another side a little bit too much. Last session we talked about distractions, and this is going to be like an introduction to a system. Thinking of a system of praying, of tools. This kind of goes along with planning, but a bit of like we plan, but like how does that really work? Because you could just say, I want to pray more next month, but if we don't have a way to get that done, then you won't. Like, you just won't. And that's true for any habit. Remember, for any habit, we need motivation, we need time, we need focus. So this is a little bit of how to kind of thread those pieces in together into a system. It's kind of like, how do you make sure the people in your life are a priority? How do you make that happen? Birthdays, date nights, dinners, nights out. What about work? When you're at work, like how do you make sure that you schedule your life around to make sure you get there on time and leave? And also, while you're there, how to make sure you use your time the best. There's deadlines that you have. There are meeting times that go on. Now, God is not a job, and prayer is more than something than a duty. Although there is a duty level to prayer, there's more than that. Of course, he's not just a mate either. He's not just kind of content to be off on the side, and then whenever you want to talk with him, he's cool. Right? God is something more than that. He's much more than that. But if we keep track of all these other elements in our lives that are not, or at least we say, they're not as high of a priority as God, then shouldn't we at least have some kind of way of keeping track or some kind of system of keeping in touch with God in prayer? Surely he would deserve, at least something like that. Hopefully more than something like that, but nothing less than that, right? It's with planning. If we don't plan, you won't pray as much. Like that's just true. If you don't plan to pray, you won't. If you don't have a system or some other kind of tool for prayer, you won't pray as much, or when you do, it will be more difficult. It will feel like less meaningful, and you won't really get to like the real act of praying. Prayer is already difficult enough, so let's make it as easy as possible. Now, there's a few things I'm going to run through here, and all of these are also on the discussion guide and on the website, redeemermcr.com/prayer. So these are just more like introductions to these things. The first thing I want to bring up is Paul Miller's book, A Praying Life. I have a love affair with this book. It's amazing. One of the things that he has, the systems that he has, is a very basic analog system, is using prayer cards. Like a note card that you can easily keep on hand. Let me bring one up here and show the screen. Yes, here we are. So you'll have a name on top of whoever it is that you're praying for. You'll write a verse on there. Of course, it takes praying to God for what kind of verse, what kind of area of scripture should I be praying for this person. That can be a really helpful way to go. And then you'll write out areas where you want this person to grow. And some of this might require developing a holy imagination for that person. Let's say they aren't a Christian. How would their life change if they come to Jesus? Not only eternally, but like their daily life. How would that affect their family, their work, their own kind of relationship with themselves? Those are the kind of things that we want to pray for. Other things we could pray for are circumstantial things, like maybe they're going through something really difficult. We want to pray for that thing for them to overcome it. Now, if they are Christians, then we can pray for how they can grow in other areas that of which Jesus has already worked into them. The work that Jesus has started, the one that he's going to complete. What are areas that we can pray for them to grow in? Maybe we know them well because they're part of church or part of our missional community. Maybe we don't know them that well. And one of the things we want to pray for is for us to know them better. There's all sorts of things. But the Paul Miller's kind of thing, his note card thing, is the idea of just write it down on the note card. So when you pray, when you sit down to pray and you have that time allotted, you're like, these next 5 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it is, I'm going to sit down and pray. You don't have to spend time thinking, now who should I pray for? Okay, yeah, I'll pray for that person. Now, what should I pray for them about? And then you spend 5 minutes thinking about what you're going to pray, and then all of a sudden your 5 minutes are up and you're done. This means when you sit down to pray, you get to it. You get to praying because you've already done that work ahead of time. Now, it doesn't have to be note cards. It can be something else. There's a really helpful app that I use all the time, praying for you at Redeemer, praying for other churches, praying for the persecuted church, all sorts of things like that. It's called PrayerMate. It's free. It's really easy to use. It's very helpful. And whenever I sit down to pray, and I know I'm going to start some intercessory prayer, when I'm going to be praying and asking God for stuff as a helpless child, I'm going to open up that app and I'm going to swipe over and it's going to show me like however many cards I want to show. It kind of works like the note card system. And I'll say, okay, I'm going to pray for 10 things. 10 things will just show up and I'm just going to cycle through those 10 things. And I'm just going to pray the whole time. I'm not going to be worried about what am I praying for, how am I going to do it, who am I going to pray for? It's going to be there for me. And then the next day, I pray through the next 10 things. And I get through it. And you get to cycle through those over and over and over again. And as people's lives change, when those prayers come up, I can add things to that. I can subtract from that. It's just the same thing as a note card thing. What it does is it gets you to get to pray instead of thinking about praying, which is not really prayer. There are other apps out there, I'm sure, that are very helpful. Another thing that might be helpful is actual paper or a journal. We haven't talked about journaling. It's not really worked for me. I know for other people it works fantastically. So use that if it works. If it doesn't work, try it on. And if it doesn't work for you now, well, then use something else. It might work for you 5 years, 10 years from now. But if it doesn't work for you now, don't try and force to prayer journaling because it makes you feel holy or something like that. It doesn't really get you to pray. And what does that mean to prayer? It just basically means you're writing out your prayers to God. So it keeps you focused, and you get to look back on all the things you've been praying for. You get to see, wow, I was really self-interested this last week, just praying for myself all the time. This next week, I'm just going to pray for other people. Or this next week, I'm going to pray for other churches and other places. Or this next week, I'm going to pray for God to plant more churches in Manchester, whatever the thing is. And it helps you keep a little bit more on task because you're writing it down. You're getting your body at least somewhat involved. There are other apps out there that help you to pray and that have that guided kind of prayer. Lectio 365 is one of them. There's some others as well. All of this is up on redeemermcr.com/prayer. All these kind of links will be up there. There's also prayer guides that we'll be handing out for Redeemer. At least this is what we'll be doing in the autumn of 2021 to keep us praying for those who know Jesus, those who don't know Jesus, and the wider church, either for Redeemer, the church in Manchester, and the church farther afield in other countries. Because sometimes it's easy for us to pray for people we know. We don't really end up praying like big kind of kingdom prayers for the church or for other people that we don't know yet. Now, the main advantage for having a system, and this is just talking about why you should have one, really. The main advantage for having a system is, again, I don't have to spend 5 minutes thinking, who should I pray for? I just get to praying. And this course is all about getting you to pray more often and more deeply and stronger so that we can enjoy our relationship with God more, so that we can love other people well, and so that we can develop more of that spiritual self-awareness in our own lives that will work its way out in humility, that'll work its way out in serving other people and being more generous and all sorts of things. So when my mind wanders and I pray, I might even pray for those other things that I'm wondering, I'm already doing it. I'm already talking to God when I'm using a system that works well. Now, that said, a system that works well now may not be the system that works well a year from now, 10 years from now. Different life stages, for sure, will throw those systems, will explode those things. And so as our life changes, we need to change our system too. It's not some kind of rigid thing, as we're trying to get into conversation as much as possible. So I hope that's helpful. And if you want to look at some of these systems, you go to redeemermcr.com/prayer, and that'll be helpful there. And in your discussions with other people, you can talk about what is helpful for you, what is not helpful for you, and hear how others might kind of respond as well. You might get some other ideas on some things to kind of inject into your prayer life. So thanks, and we'll see you with the next and the last session.